We're about halfway through the NBA season. We're a little bit late, but we still want to hand out some midseason awards. I do want to shout out you guys. Last Tuesday's video, over 10,000 views all the way to 11 and 12,000. So shout out to you guys. But Bakari, of course, longtime co-host of the show, you're joining us here. How you doing? And are you ready to hand out some awards?
Yeah, I'm doing great. I'm excited to be back on the show. I think this is like the record for most times I've been on the show in a month since I had to do quit the full time co-hosting duties. But yeah, I'm ready to see what we can get to in the show.
Yeah, we're excited whenever you can make it, is a good way to put it. But then, without further ado, let's just hop straight into it, man, with the MVP of the league. Of course, Bakari's answers are going to be on this right side of these boxes. You'll see that as we go on in these award handing outs, I guess is a good way to put it. I guess these ballots is a better way to put it. On the left side, I will be on that left side. But if we have the same answers, they combine. Hopefully that makes sense. Nikola Jokic, Bakari, the reigning finals MVP, the reigning Western Conference MVP. This is a guy that is the best player in basketball. Why, to you, do not have him higher on this list? Because he's fourth in the Western Conference. He's averaging 26, 12, and 9. A bad night for this guy. Seems like a 20-point triple-double. But why is he not higher on this list for you here in 2023, 2024?
Yeah, yeah, I think with Jokic, the ultimate respect to him, I mean, coming from me is like he's always going to be at least a top five, top three player in these MVP rankings every year, just because of how good he is. I mean, he MVP, uh, it's an award that suffers from voters fatigue sometimes, and I think Jokic, you can get so used to his numbers that you just kind of forget how amazing they are. And then the two other guys that I had above him, I feel like individually how they're driving their teams and where the position of their teams so far this year have gave them a little bit more of a compelling argument against Jokic, because I do take that into consideration where your team is sitting and how you are
Right.
playing. And I think the two other guys, that I have above them personally, have been able to just be in a little bit better position so
Yeah.
far at this point in the season.
Yeah, this is a good time for me to tell you guys here at home. This is not what we're predicting is going to happen. I guess a little bit, but this is kind of what we would do with our ballots, is a good way to put it. If we were handed one in sports media, which they need to start considering doing that, especially with how these all-star votes have turned out. And we were talking about that before the show. But Nikola Jokic, I mean, best player in basketball, the best player on one of the best teams. And if Jamal Murray didn't miss a good part of that first part of the year, where Jokic kept them afloat and was the one seed for a while, this team wouldn't be a four seed. This team would still be in that 1-2 range. Regardless, they're still only a couple games back with Jamal Murray missing that time, and that's because Nikola Jokic is so amazing. And shout out to Michael Porter Jr., Aaron Gordon. They were playing good in that in Jamal Murray's absence as well. But Jamal Murray is back, and of course, he looks back to himself. At number two, is it going to be Anthony Edwards? Is it going to be Shea Gilgeous-Alexander? That's what we're going to go with. The leader of the youngest team in basketball. They're currently fighting for that number one seed. I know a couple days ago they had it. I think the Timberwolves have taken it back now. I could be mistaken. Regardless, Shea has had 7 straight 30-plus point games as of the recording of this video. This guy is just, I'll let you touch on the fact that we were talking about before the show with how those points come. Regardless, he is the leader on one of the best teams and the youngest team in the NBA, and he has them as a top 2 seed, fighting for the overall best record, not only in the West, but in the entire NBA. This guy's a fashion icon off the court, but on the court, he's still going to razzle dazzle and kill you on the court. But Bakari, here, your thoughts about SGA and why is he just not there yet here in 2024?
Yeah, so I think Shea, he's a player that every single year he's been in the league, he's gotten better. And I think, a couple of years ago, or for a couple of years, he wasn't getting the respect he deserved. Because if you're a true fan of Shea, you do know that he battled some injuries the past couple of years, whether it was like an ankle sprain here or there. He just missed games, but his on the court production never changed. Last year, I think that's when people started taking notice. Unfortunately, they weren't able to make the playoffs, but they did make the play in.
Right.
And this year he's been at a whole nother level. His shot creating ability, his playmaking ability are at a whole nother level. I think I said it, maybe before the season or at the beginning of the season. Shea is probably a top 3 ISO player in the league.
Yeah.
And it also helps. It does help. What I'm about to say is not hating on Shea, but it does help. He gets a lot of calls. He gets a lot of questionable calls too. Whether it's his play style, like James Harden once was. I think any great scorer of the game has to be able to go to the free throw line. And, whether you hate it or love it, they're able to get those calls. So for me, Shea is number two. Like you mentioned, they are the 2 seed now. They just lost to the Timberwolves last night, but the fact that he's able to keep this team 1-2 in a competitive West, his counting stats are really good as well. This is a young player. I believe he probably will win one. At least one in his career.
Right.
I believe that. But there's just another guy. There's always just one more guy that at the moment you look at what he's doing, and it's just unbelievable. Shea at number two. I feel like this is where he deserves to be at the moment.
Yeah, those Thunder players always end up number two. Kevin Durant
Yeah.
took a historic season for both Kevin Durant and Russell Westbrook to get theirs. Regardless, I think, like you and me talked about before the show, expectations mean a lot, for our awards here at the midseason mark. And Shea and this team, I saw people have them as a 7, 8, 9, 10, missing the play-in because of their youth, and they're a 1-2 seed. So I think just for the simple fact that he's been that great leading up to this point, of course, success plays a part for both his individual side of things and the team success. So rightfully so, we both have him at number two. But at number one, if this guy hasn't been on such of a tear lately, I think I would have had Shea at number one.
Yeah.
But whenever you drop 70 points in an NBA regulated game, you deserve your flowers, right? Of course, first time MVP last year, and it seems to be the new trend in the NBA now where, Giannis won 2 straight, Jokic wins 2 straight. Joel's on his way to winning 2 straight. So it's really just all these players hitting their prime and really are just playing out of their mind for 2 straight years. And then they're like, all right, let me calm down. Let me go win a championship. But Joel Embiid has just been so dominant inside and out. He is getting to the free throw line a lot more than we'd like. But I guess defenses are looking at it like that's the only way to stop this man, because this year you lost James Harden. Some people had him as a middle of the pack team in the Eastern Conference. Fair enough. I think they're a 4 or 5 seed at the moment. I think the Cavs are the 4 seed. Actually, they might be 3. Regardless, a lot of people had this team underperforming this year because they didn't have that secondary star. And they said, hey, Joel Embiid, he's not going to be able to carry the load by himself because of his health history. He's done that and plus some. So I think rightfully so, offensively, defensively, he's been everything for the 76ers. I think he's the 2024 MVP at the midseason mark. But your thoughts here about the 70-point man?
Yeah, I completely agree. I completely agree with everything you just said. Joel Embiid, he's dominating in the league right now. Like you mentioned, he gets to the line a lot, but you could say that about a lot of players in the league.
Right.
I think what certain people just don't like is the way they do it. They got to over exaggerate. Joel Embiid, I don't want to say he's a flopper, but he's on to over exaggerate small things. He's always on the ground. I know a lot of people don't like that about his play style, but when you really look at it, his dominance is more than just a free throw line. The defense focuses so much on him that he creates open opportunities for Tyrese Maxey, Tobias Harris, guys like that. Joel Embiid, like you mentioned, he just scored 70 the other night on Victor Wembanyama. Yeah, he's a rookie, but I mean, it still happened. And
He's a top 10 player in the league already. Wemby? I'm just
well,
joking.
maybe according to 2K,
Right.
but yeah, the Joel Embiid, this is somebody who, like you mentioned, if he wasn't playing so out of his mind, I think it'd be clear as Shea being the lead runner for MVP. But Joel Embiid is, I think he's averaging 36 points a game right now. 36 is insane midway through the season.
Yeah.
Now he can only miss, I think, 5 more games until he's out of contention for that. But if he doesn't miss those 5 games, he almost has MVP on. If he just keeps playing the way he's been playing so far, he almost has MVP on lock, and it's we're almost at all-star break.
With how perimeter centric the game is nowadays, to be a big man and to lead the league in scoring at this point in the year is very impressive in its own right. But I want to ask you this before we move on to the rest of the awards here. Did you do your awards based on the new you have to play a certain amount of games, or did you just give it to whoever because we're at the midseason mark?
I gave it to whoever would, because
Yeah.
of
Okay.
the midseason mark. Yeah, I think once I made my list, and then like once it was like kind of apparent, like, oh, he only has 5 more games to play, things of that nature. That's when I was kind of like, oh, maybe I could have made him a little bit different. But I mean, I think there's no denying right now that this is probably most people's list. Like I said, Joel can only miss, I think, 5 more games, and that'll be unfortunate for him if he, doesn't get the 65 game requirement and misses out on MVP after a historic season. But at the moment, he still has hope.
Shea's had an amazing season, but if he gets it just because Embiid misses games, that's gonna be a charity MVP. But
Yeah.
quick shout
I
out
will
here.
say one
Go
thing
ahead. Go ahead.
about another reason I had Embiid one. Another reason I had him one was because last time he did play Jokic earlier in this season, that was a matchup he was able to get the better of. So that always goes into play. But I always feel like Joel Embiid, at
What about last
Philly.
week when he didn't show up?
Well, exactly. I was just about to say, whenever he plays in Philly against one of the, these like Giannis or Jokic or like Rudy Gobert or something, he always dominates them. Like puts up a historic game, and then he'll go there and not play or not
Yeah.
show up. So yeah, that's not a new trend.
Yeah, stomach soreness for Joel Embiid. But quick shout out here to you, just for next week. Of course, you see Zach LaVine on the screen. I'm going to be going live just like Bakari and I did last year. Bakari, you might be busy for this, but not this Thursday. Next Thursday, I'm going to be going live for the NBA trade deadline, maybe from like 1 to 3 o'clock. It's going to replace that day's podcast. So if you guys want to hang out, of course, join for the news. We're going to be there beforehand to talk about rumors. Of course, during the trades when they happen, and then after the fact, we're going to do a little bit of a review. But from 2 to 3 o'clock or from 1 to 3, either or, be on the lookout. We're going to be live for the NBA trade deadline. But then we move over to the Defensive Player of the Year. And you have some explaining to do, at least in my books here, at the number 3 spots. To me, I have Jaden McDaniels. I have the X factor for the Minnesota Timberwolves. I've been one of the biggest stands for Jaden McDaniels all season. I think in order for this team to go deep in the playoffs, this is a guy that needs to be healthy and playing like he is right now. He's in the Defensive Player of the Year race for me because this Minnesota Timberwolves offense is bottom 10 in the league. Gary, I don't even know if you knew that. You probably did. But this is a team that's bottom 10 in the league, yet they're still number 1 in the Western Conference because they have the number 1 defense in the NBA. And a large part of that is because of 2 people on this list. But I think the guy that goes under the radar is Jaden McDaniels. He's a guy that you can throw on wings, guards, even a big that's not Joel Embiid. And he's at least going to minimize what they do on the court. And minimizing a star player could be all the difference. So I think Jaden McDaniels goes under the radar. I want to show him some flowers here at the midseason mark. But you have Jaren Jackson Jr., the reigning, defending Defensive Player of the Year, no pun intended. Your thoughts here about the guy that's bottom of the conference here?
Yeah. So I think, when you get to, naming out lists of certain awards like this one, I think, this one to some people, and especially if you watch basketball and you're able to take, like you just mentioned, like the defensive ratings and everything, it sometimes is clear cut who at least is leading the race this far into the season,
Right.
or who should win it. To me, it's like that for me. For my number 1, I think we share number 1 and number 2. So
Yes.
for me, I just wanted to show a little bit of love to Jaren Jackson because I think that if Ja Morant never got hurt and this team was still able to, take leaps up into that Western Conference, I think he would be getting a lot more love and respect about what he's doing on the defensive end this year. It wasn't pretty, especially at the beginning of the year when they were losing all those games, and he has been hurt. He has missed a few games, but I think that he's still a premier defender in this league. I think that, like I said, if this team was winning a little bit more, he would be in contention for that top spot. He just won it last year. So I think this is one of those guys that, he's a difference maker on the defensive end. This very easily could have been another player who's been hurt. But Jaren Jackson, to me, I just wanted to show him a little bit of love because I think people forget, he is an elite defender because
Right.
of the situation he's in. But obviously, with where they're at in the West and how the season has been going for them, he won't win it. But just a reminder, Jaren Jackson is still an elite defender.
You think there's any stat shaving going on this year? You think he's getting those inflated blocks this year because they're losing?
Well, regardless if there was that shaving last year, I guess he's still one. And Jaren Jackson, to me, like I feel like there are better individual defenders, but I think he plays. You could say the same thing about like somebody like Giannis or like I'm trying to think of like some
Like
great
Luka
rim
Doncic, elite
game.
defenders.
Yeah. They're really good team defenders. Brook Lopez is one of those guys. Brook Lopez was top 3 in I think defensive player last year. So I think Jaren Jackson, whenever the team has Steven Adams down to anchor, and you have those, we haven't even seen it with Marcus Smart and Ja yet on a perimeter guarding 2 guys and Desmond Bane. I think next year he'll definitely show again, why he can be a decoy.
Yeah, I did want to mention here, before the season, I did a video of my award predictions for MVP Jason Tatum. He's not currently my top 3. And for Defensive Player of the Year, I had Evan Mobley, and he is nowhere to be found. But who knows? He just
Played
returned.
good last year.
Yeah,
Last week.
Well,
or
right.
last night. I'm sorry,
Yeah,
just
he
got it wrong.
returned
Vegas
recently.
returned.
Maybe he could turn back the clock to last year, right? Not too long ago. At number two, though, we're gonna go to Bam Adebayo, man. Bam Adebayo, I think is quite literally the defensive anchor for the Miami Heat. I think if there's an All-Star this year, like I had on my All-Star ballot on last Tuesday, I gave it to Bam Adebayo. If a Miami Heat player has to get one, this is a guy that has held down the fort as Jimmy Butler was out for a big stretch of time. Of course, they just got Terry Rozier, so there's some more hype and attention around this team. But I just think it went under the radar that Bam Adebayo, it's another year where he's continuing his defensive excellence, keeping them, high in the rankings, and of course, being the defensive menace that he is. So I just think he's one of those players that he might never win the award, but he's always going to be in the conversation. But Bam Adebayo, to me, I think he deserves his flowers. And of course, he's been a defensive anchor for the Miami Heat so far this year. Really a reason why they've stayed in that pack and stayed in the race when their best player was out due to some injury. But your thoughts here about Bam Adebayo and maybe even transition into number one?
Yeah, I mean, like you just said it. I think if Bam was if Bam was winning DPOY based on the consideration every year, he have about five of them. I feel
Right,
like every year he's won, or he at one point in the season he's won every single time, every single year. Obviously he drops down or drops off a bit, but this is an All NBA defender, multiple time All NBA defender. He can guard 1 through 5 because he's not he's not the biggest guy, but he's the most he's probably the most versatile big defender
oh,
in the
yeah.
league right now, and he can get steals, he can get blocks, and his presence alone is enough to help a team's defense. Like you mentioned, it he is an anchor for the Heat right now. He deserves to be an all-star. But Bam, he's always a solid player on defense, and you can always give him that respect. But I mean, when you have Bam to me, yeah, I don't know. Bam to me is a guy that he doesn't blow you away. His stats never blow
Right,
you away. You just have to watch him. And
right,
I think that's what the biggest thing about Bam. Maybe that's why he doesn't get one, because some guys like Jaren Jackson can get crazy blocks.
right.
Some guys like Jaden McDaniels can have those plays where they lock you up for a possession. But Bam, if you really watch the way the Heat play, they really revolve around him on defense.
Yeah. And I mean, like, especially when you got guys like when you have, not so elite defenders on the perimeter, Terry
Mhm.
Rozier. I mean, before this, Kyle Lowry, he was taking a step back. You have Tyler Hero out there, Terry Rozier. Jaime Jaquez is okay, but again, he's a rookie. He still has his miscues. If Jimmy Butler's not there, and even when Jimmy Butler's there, he's only playing at 65%. We know Jimmy Butler. So it's not like there's a lot of other great defenders around this team. So he's keeping them
Yeah.
afloat. At number one, though, I'm going to double dip. You are going to, I guess, grab the leader and the anchor of the number one defense in basketball, Rudy Gobert. Of course, this is the guy that has returned to Defensive Player of the Year form. Me and you have had many discussions about this team as far as playoff time. We are worried that he's just going to run into the same problems that he did in Utah for many years, where when it comes down to a 7-game series, it's slowed down half court offense. We don't know if this guy is going to be able to stay on the basketball court. But your thoughts here? He's still amazing, still top of all the advanced statistics, analytics, and of course the anchor for the number one defense. But any additional thoughts about the Frenchman?
No, I think I think the Timberwolves defense. When I watch it, it reminds me a lot about like what the Cavs were trying to institute at least the past couple of years with Evan Mobley and Jared Allen. Obviously Rudy Gobert probably has more defensive prowess than any of those two when it comes to just interior defense alone. He's not as versatile as Evan Mobley, and he's probably not even as mobile as Jared Allen is sometimes. But when you really especially this point in the season when teams are teams it's not that half court offense. It's fast breaking. He can really protect the paint. I think it makes it a lot easier on him. And he is the anchor of the number one defense right now. And, you have to respect that with Rudy. And I think that's why he has, I think, what is he, won 2 or 3 so far? This will be his,
Two. This would be his
so this
third.
would be his third. He's a 2-time defensive player of the year. So it's not like he doesn't know what he's doing. But like you mentioned in the playoffs, we've seen it every single year that Utah made it to the playoffs. Terrence Mann was able to take this guy one-on-one from a series. I think they were down
Wasn't he a
2-1,
rookie?
three to
Wasn't Terrence
two.
Mann a rookie?
He was like a second-year player
Yeah,
when he
second,
wasn't really
second.
getting any burn. Like he was able to take Rudy Gobert one-on-one for 3 straight games. Obviously we've seen it. Luka was able to do it, and that's what dismantled the Jazz right there when Luka. Or no, I'm sorry, it wasn't Luka. It was Jalen Brunson and Spencer Dinwiddie because Luka was hurt. I don't even think he played that series. So
Yeah.
once they saw that, they knew it was time to go. I think the same thing will happen with the Timberwolves this year, especially because it's not like Cat is known as a defender, and when you have those two bigs out there, especially when one of them's not known as a defender, it'll really hamper your chances. But regular season wise, like you mentioned, he's a monster at advanced analytics. When you watch him too, he does have that kind of intimidator presence in the paint. Like people don't want to go up on him,
Right.
but he deserves defensive player of the year so far this season.
And Draymond's a close fourth. If I think just his overall ability to stop offensive players physically. I think
Yeah,
it's
which one,
I
a
think I
chokehold
think
or a punch?
both. We're just missing a drop kick at this point, and he's got the whole thing. But then we move over to the Rookie of the Year race, and of course, Chet Holmgren, Victor Wembanyama, and other talented rookies. Who's going to win it here in the first, at least in our midseason ballots? At number 3, though, we both have the number 16th overall pick, I guess, or at least if I remember correctly, in Jaime Jaquez Jr. Of course, he's played a lot of solid minutes for the Miami Heat. He's been a solid two-way player. And Bakari, the Miami Heat have done it yet again. They keep finding these diamonds in the rough, these gems that don't on paper blow you away, but they come in, they buy into the Heat culture. Of course, they buy into the Eric Spoelstra schemes, and they just play, amazing in their role. And playing amazing in your role sometimes can be as impactful as winning, or being top 3 in an award race like Jaime Jaquez Jr. has been. And again, he's took a big step up when Jimmy Butler missed a lot of that time. So I just think that he deserves his flowers here because, maybe you can argue Brandon Miller. I'm not going to spoil the rest of your list, but maybe you can argue Brandon Miller. The one game Scoot Henderson was good. Some other guys there, but it seems like a lot of the lottery picks this year have spent a lot of time in the G League. So Jaime has kind of, he's deserved it. Don't get me wrong, but I think there's not really a ton of options here for the third spot here.
Yeah, I think as a whole, this draft class has probably been a little bit of a letdown. It was seen as probably three guys could potentially go number one, or
Yeah.
the guys who went 2 and 3 would probably go number one in any other draft class. To like you mentioned, Brandon Miller has been playing a lot better recently. He's been having some really good games. Keontae George on the Jazz, he's also
Oh
been
yeah.
really good
Yes.
so far this season. But Jaime, he's been probably the most consistent outside of who 1 and 2 are, and that's not anything. It always takes young players a lot of time to keep it going. And like you mentioned, the Heat always finding these diamond in the rough type players, but you got to feel bad for the Heat at some point. When are they going to find a star? No, but
No, I'm serious. That's a good point though.
like yeah, I mean, they run into the same problem, pretty much every year, at least since the Jimmy Butler era. It's been you get so far in the playoffs that you just like at certain points you need another star. You need another player who's gonna be able to take the ball. That's why you go get Terry Rozier, but Terry Rozier, I don't, who's calling Terry Rozier a star, but he plays really good. He's an individual type of player, ISO type of player. He can create and he can ball handle, but I think the Heat, at some point Jimmy's like 35, 34.
Yeah,
They're going to
he's
need to
getting
start
up
thinking
there.
about,
He was an old rookie when he came in.
yeah.
He's getting up there.
And
I'll
Jaime, I think Jaime is pretty old too. I think he spent 2 or 3 years in college as well. So, these players are rare. They are the definition of the Heat culture, but
Jimmy's
uh,
34, just to throw it out there.
yeah, so he's 34. They need to start thinking about what's next. I don't necessarily think Jaime is going to be the next Jimmy Butler, or they're really expecting him to step into those shoes. But to credit to him, like you mentioned, he played really good when Jimmy was out. He had that good Christmas game when I don't even think Bam or Jimmy was playing, or Tyler Hero. I think he was probably the only
Yeah,
one playing, and I can't remember who they played, but I know he had like 33 and 10 or something like that. So credit to him. He's really done amazing so far halfway through the season. The key thing about these rookies too is how consistently do they play well, and to me that's what got him top 3 in this ranking.
absolutely. But then we move over to the top 2. Of course, it's the age-old, well, not the age-old, but it's been a big debate this entire season. Is it Chet Holmgren? Is it Victor Wembanyama? Should Chet even be considered a rookie? I want to get your thoughts on that, Picard, before we get into the top 2. Because Chet got hurt last year, are you of the belief that okay, he got hurt, he didn't even get a chance to play his rookie year? Should he still be in this running? Or do you think that hey, injuries are part of the game, it happens, and unfortunately you missed out on your rookie season? Which side of the coin are you on? Do you think Chet should be a rookie, quote unquote, this year against other guys that are actually rookies?
I I would probably agree that he is a rookie. And the only reason I say that is because it's one thing to, yeah, he was sitting on the bench all last year. He was able to get front row seats of what was going on last year. It's another thing to actually go out there and play. You can get as many mental, reps as it takes to, you could get 3 years of mental reps. But at the end of the day, if you still aren't, good, then you're not good. So I think that I would consider them a rookie because to go out and make a type of impact that they've had, it's not easy, and it doesn't always happen. We see a lot of people who either spend a lot of time in the G League or are hurt most of their rookie year, and they come back the second year and they're not that much better. I think the most memorable people to miss their rookie season and be really good are probably Blake Griffin, Ben Simmons, and Joel Embiid. Those are the only three I can think of off the top of my head. So you still got to give these guys credit. They still got to go out and execute. And that's probably why I believe that they're rookies because they also haven't been adjusted to that NBA game speed yet. They can practice, but it's another thing stepping out on that court come live ball and going out there and competing.
With that being said, who's that number 2 for you?
Chet Holmgren.
That
This
Holmgren
is
is that number 2?
he is. He's at number 2. This is somebody who earlier in the season he was probably number 1. Because it goes back to where the Thunder were or how the Thunder were playing and how he was playing compared to where they should have been. And Chet, he looked like a top 5 big man for a few weeks. Like he really looked like he was that good. And not taking anything away with him, I still think he is really good. He's just kind of cooled off a little bit. I wouldn't even say cooled off. I think he's more so filling in the role that the Thunder need him to play right now, and that's protecting the paint and shooting the 3 ball really well. And when you have a generational talent like who we have at number 1, it's always going to be hard to be above that guy, especially when you have a better team around you. So you have to do less. So it doesn't always show up on paper. It's another one of those things. If you watch Chet play, he is really good. He doesn't look like a rookie out there. I will give you that, but neither does the number 1 guy on our list. Yeah. So I think that's why we both have Chet too.
Yeah, Chet for 2 to me. I've actually you had a lot of great points there. I've always been of the mindset of look, injuries happen. Even though he was hurt, he had an entire year with NBA trainers, NBA dietitians. Of course, his frame was always in question. I just think that there is a mental edge that you get over some of these guys that are 18, 19, and you have a full year of, I guess prep is a good way to have it over these guys. But of course, the argument could go both ways, like we mentioned. But at number 1, we have Victor Wembanyama, Victor Alphabet. But this guy is just an alien. And like you mentioned there was a period of time where the first month or so of the season where Chet was the clear front runner for Rookie of the Year, at least in my opinion. I think, weirdly enough, Bakari, it was when Pop made that change to put Vic on a minute restriction. Once Vic went on a minute restriction, he took over. He's been that number 1 generational prospect. I say it all the time. It's one thing to have expectations, whatever sport you're in or whatever company you're in, whatever profession you're in. It's another thing to live up to them. And I think Victor has done that plus some for the San Antonio Spurs here. Like you mentioned there, generational prospect came in with more hype than LeBron James, it felt like. And I'm not going to say he's LeBron, of course, rookie year, and his team has under 10 wins, but he's showing a lot of potential to be a generational guy going forward for this team and being their next Tim Duncan, being their next cornerstone for when Pop does hang it up. Victor can take the keys and the mantle and carry this franchise for years and years. But your thoughts here about number 1, and of course we know it's a very close call between 1 and 2, but your thoughts here about Victor Wembanyama taking the Rookie of the Year?
Yeah, I everything you said I agree with once again. This is somebody who he's putting up these numbers, and a lot of times when you watch this Spurs team play, it's like his teammates didn't even really want to pass him the ball. It's like his teammates don't want to believe he's actually out there. And it's like I don't know. It's unbelievable to me how many times he doesn't get those more wide open shots because he doesn't get the ball in those spots. But I think his coming out game really to put him at number 1 was against Giannis. He played so well offensively and defensively, and that's what surprised me. He's still able to affect the game as well as he has defensively. Obviously, whenever you have that much length, whenever you have you can do anything you need to do on defense on a defensive end. But it's another thing, like I said, to go out there and actually execute that and be able to stay in front of these guards, be able to contest, guys like Joel Embiid or Giannis Antetokounmpo. So, the way he's playing and for a rookie who's coming over from France, he's played more efficiently, or he's played efficiently more times than not. And, you got to give him that. This is somebody who's going out there with Jeremy Sohan as his point guard. I could probably play point guard better than
Who
Jeremy
knows?
Sohan.
Hey, who knows? Trey Young might be on the way for Victor Wembanyama.
Well, if that is the case, I feel bad for Wemby because yeah, he averaged 32 and 15, but Trey Young's going to average 15 turnovers trying to get the ball to him. So you know,
That is our rookie of the year race. Then we move over to six man. Both of us have Norman Powell. Statistically, this is a guy that's not having a great season, of course, at least start to the year, but he's one of those players where his impact is there. Of course, he takes those tough assignments defensively, though he's not always going to be great at it. He takes those tough assignments, and he's just one of those guys that's going to be that much needed spacing for James Harden, Russell Westbrook, Paul George, Kawhi Leonard, of course, the four first ballot Hall of Famers this team has. I just think that, he's a solid six man and he deserves to be in the running for a team that has really turned that page since James Harden joined town, is a good way to put it. But any additional thoughts here about Norman Powell?
no, Norman Powell, he's been really good off the bench since he's been a Toronto Raptor. I feel like he's always in these rankings too.
Yeah.
He's always one of those guys that's in top 5 and 6 man of the year rankings. So credit to him.
Then we get to number 2. I have Naz Reid and you have Malik Monk. And I'll let you dive into Malik Monk because I don't have him on my list. But of course, he was very close. Could have been my number 3. He's in that same running with Norman Powell, where it's every single year he's in the conversation, at least starting last year. But your thoughts here about Malik Monk is he's been statistically a great player for the Sacramento Kings.
Malik Monk, he's to me, he reminds me of how teams used to use JR, like how the Knicks used to use JR. He comes off the bench and he would provide you with a lot of buckets. Some nights he doesn't shoot really well. Other nights he'll go for like 37 points on like 10 threes. Malik Monk, he's a six man that closes a game for you. This is somebody who you have out there when you need to get buckets. He's the definition of what you probably want out of what most teams ideally want out of their six man. He's playing on a good team. It almost feels like cheating whenever you have guys like this. He's a starting caliber player.
But then we're going to move over to Naz Reid. And of course, I'm going to spoil it here, Bakar. I'm going to spoil it. You have him at number 1 if the computer is going to work with me here. I have him at number 2. I could have had him at number 1, but, I wanted to differ a little bit. Regardless, we're going to show some love to Naz Reid. Of course, this is a guy that's coming off of the best teams in basketball, record-wise, the bench. And, of course, he's been everything for them, offensively, defensively, and he got a much-needed bag this offseason. But honestly, with the way he's playing this year, Bakari, I think he's underpaid, is a good way to put it. But Naz Reid, of course, bright future, and he's just one of those dominant. He adds to the list of dominant bigs that the Minnesota Timberwolves have, versatile bigs that the Minnesota Timberwolves have. But any additional thoughts here about your six man of the year halfway through the year?
No, it's just amazing what being the best team in basketball at the current time of
Yes,
things
yes.
happening can bring, like how many awards it can bring individually to these players, because it's crazy. We've had Jaden McDaniels, Rudy Gobert. I don't think we haven't even mentioned Ant or Cat, but like Naz Reid, like guys who maybe wouldn't be getting as much recognition are they're in almost every list. So shout out to the T-Wolves.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And then at number 1, I have Tim Hardaway Jr. This is a guy that's averaging like 18, 19 points a game efficiently. He's not been that this year for the Dallas Mavericks, but when has Tim Hardaway ever really been efficient in his career? Let's be honest. But I think, with Kyrie constantly missing some time this year, or with Luka Doncic missing some time, this team already didn't have a lot of depth. Tim Hardaway has been, he's taken a step up this year, and I think just his spacing is much needed on this team. I just think that he deserves his flowers with how he stepped up when the other stars have missed some time, whether for personal reasons or, of course, due to injury. Of course, Luka had a baby earlier in the year. Regardless, any additional thoughts about these three here before we move over to the most improved list?
Yeah, had I been thinking, I think Tim Hardaway has had a lot of great games since I put in, I guess I could have put in at any point, but like Tim Hardaway, to me, he's been playing way better than I think I noticed. Especially like that Atlanta game. Tim Hardaway Jr., I shouldn't say the Atlanta game. There was another game in there, I think, before the Atlanta game where he was really, really playing well. He just had a good game, I think, a night or two ago as well. Tim Hardaway Jr., he's definitely I definitely probably should have had him somewhere in my list. I should have found a spot for him.
We also talk. I had the luxury of also seeing your list beforehand, and we're going to talk about that with the most improved player list. But if I could differ from you and it makes sense, I always try to do that. But without further ado, let's get into the most improved player. And let me before you guys jump into the comment section, I saw Bakari had Tyrese Maxey at 3. And Bakari, I'm going to speak for you here because I'm pretty sure you have the same sentiment. We both have Tyrese Maxey winning this award. Let's be clear. But for an award like this, where you want to kind of show people their flowers that don't usually get them, that is the Most Improved Player award. We wanted to show flowers elsewhere and give the the flowers and the spotlight elsewhere. Of course, if we had to bet our life on it, we're going to say Tyrese Maxey is going to win this award. When you jump from a non-All-Star to arguably an All-NBA guard in a season, to taking the void of James Harden plus some, keeping this team afloat with Joel Embiid, of course, you're going to be in that running, right? However, when we move over to Most Improved Player, I'm going to say this. I had the luxury of seeing your list beforehand, and I did not have Tyrese Maxey on my list for the simple fact that you're going to talk about him. And of course, we know how great he is. But any additional thoughts there about Tyrese before we dive into Mr. Kobe White?
Yeah, so it's funny because I wanted to put Kobe White on mine, but I was like, it's going to be absolute crime if I just leave Tyrese Maxey off, and he's actually going to win an award. Everybody out there, Tyrese Maxey is good enough to have started in the All-Star game. If Damian Lillard could have started, Tyrese Maxey definitely
I think he
could have
deserves it
started
more.
in the All-Star game. He has the same counting sacks pretty much as Jalen Brunson, Donovan Mitchell. I think the only guard that's probably playing heads and toes above him, better than him, is Tyrese Halliburton, who is about to be out of contention for All NBA spot. So it very well could be Tyrese Maxey's spot anyway. You can say a lot about Tyrese, but I want to leave it there because this is somebody who, it almost feels disrespectful to put him on a list like this, knowing he's going to win it and knowing he probably should have even started the All-Star game. So,
I mean, yeah, they've kind of ruined this award anyway, and I think we're trying to bring it back because, look, we know Tyrese Maxey was going to be, we knew he was going to take a step up this year. We didn't know he was going to be this great, but we knew he was going to take a step up. Last year, didn't they give it to Ja Morant last year just because he
2 years ago?
2 years,
yeah, it was. I think it was 2 years ago.
2 years ago. It's just like we know that, he's a top 2 pick. We know he's supposed to be good. So unless he's suffering a lot of catastrophic injuries, why are we wasting our time giving awards to guys that are supposed to be, franchise changers? Regardless, Kobe White, to me, I want to show some love to. Of course, I had the luxury of seeing your list before. That's the third time I've said it. Last time I said it. Kobe White has played a really, really big role for the Chicago Bulls this year, and he's been really one of their lone bright spots this year because there's so much drama and there's so much focus around what's the future for this core of Zach LaVine, DeMar DeRozan, and Nikola Vucevic. And even when it was announced that that this team was coming back for another season with this core, the focus was just still on what is the future for this team, and it's not on the basketball court. So I think it's gone under the radar that Kobe White has been amazing. He could be the 6th man of the year this year, but of course, he started some games. I don't know if he'd be in contention for that. But regardless, he's been that spark plug off the bench for them. He's won them some games, and I think he just deserves his flowers because he goes under the radar here because of how bad.
Amazing from 3 this year, too.
I'm sorry?
Amazing from 3. His 3-point percentage is amazing.
Best year of his career so far.
Yeah.
Is a good way to put it. But then at number 2, I went with Alperen Sengun, and this is kind of my Tyrese Maxey card here, where we kind of knew Alperen was going to take that step. The only reason I had Alperen Sengun on my list, over Tyrese Maxey, is because coming into the year, there were still questions. Should it be Jalen Green to be the guy? Should it be Alperen Sengun? And I think Ime Udoka, if we did have a coaching ballot, Kari, he would be number 1. Even though that team sucks, again, it's the midseason mark. This is where you don't, have to go exactly by the rule book. It's because he came into this Houston Rockets team and made some questionable free agent signings at the time, but they've played out, huge. Dylan Brooks just had a great night last night against the Lakers. Again, right? It seems like everybody.
You showed that old man, King James, who we it? No, I'm playing.
He's sending LeBron into retirement. No, I'm just joking. But
he's going to be in a documentary for sure.
No, that would be crazy. If he's in LeBron's documentary, we need to file some lawsuits. But Alperen Sengun, I'll say this. So Ime Udoka, he came into this team, signed some free agents. 2, he changed the identity. He has one of the youngest teams of basketballs buying into the defensive end of the floor. You never see that. So that's 1, that's 2, and then 3, he identified who the guy is going forward. It's not Jalen Green. It's Alperen Sengun. And I think once he identified that early in the year, that's why we saw this team be a top 4 seed at one point in the season. I just think that Ime Udoka has done such an amazing job, and Alperen Sengun is a mini Nikola Jokic. His stat sheet says it. This team is just, they've lost more than they've won as of late, so they fell down the rankings. But I still want to show some love to LP. At your number 2 spot, you have maybe the second best player on his team. Of course, I'm going to spoil it here. He is my number 1. But Jalen Johnson, your thoughts here about the second year guy?
Yeah, Jalen Johnson, this is somebody who going into college, he was ranked highly, like he was going to be a lottery pick. I think he fell out in the first round, if I'm not mistaken.
Injuries, right?
And he spent some time in the G League. This is somebody who's really had to work and develop his game. We haven't seen much of him on the court. And then out of nowhere this year, he started the season off amazing. I believe he sprained his ankle, and he's come back from that, and he's still been like, I watched him play a couple of nights ago. He's still really good. Like when you watch him, the eye test just tells you he's really good. He's taken multiple steps forward in his game all the way around. It's all the way to the point where, this is his first true season getting playing time, and he's already untouchable. This is somebody the Hawks won't trade or aren't really willing to trade in anything. And I believe Jalen Johnson, once he is able to get a better established team around him or a better situation around him, I believe that he will start getting a lot more credit than what he's doing. And I believe he'll take, once again, multiple more steps in his game. And, I believe Jalen Johnson has the ability to be a future all-star. I think that he has that skill set. And I think at some point in his career, he will be an all-star. But I just wanted to show love to Jalen Johnson because this is somebody who coming out of high school, especially and going into college, this is somebody who had a lot of hype around him. And I think that, being able to see him work and develop his game and get to the point where he is right now is amazing for him.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I forgot to mention when I opened about Jalen Johnson, he's jumped up his points per game by like 11 this year.
Yeah.
And that just, that spells out to me most improved player. It's not always the number 1 pick that had a down year and then he explodes into being who we thought he was going to be. It's these role players that has had to fight their way through, like you mentioned, from the G League to now. And he might find himself in a spot where he's the guy for this team going forward because, of course, Trae Young is never. Apparently, he's always safe, but he shouldn't be. And then,
well, that's because they can't trade him. Nobody wants him.
Maybe the Spurs. Maybe the Spurs after Pop leaves. Jalen Johnson, he's at my number 1 spot, like you mentioned. You said all the great points. But then at your number 1 spot, a guy with maybe the best nickname in the NBA. I'm not going to say it on here. I'll leave that to you if you want to. But Jonathan Kuminga for the Golden State Warriors. Your thoughts here about one of the lone bright spots about this Warriors crew this year?
Yeah, Jonathan Kuminga, I'm not going to say his nickname, but Jonathan Kuminga, he does have the best nickname in the game right now. This is somebody who, once again, he's had to take multiple steps, and he's kind of had to, I think any other team where if he was drafted to a team that was truly rebuilding, and he was able to be that guy all the way along or get the ball in his hands more, this is somebody who I believe probably will be a borderline all-star type of player at this point in his career right now. But because he came into such a unique situation, he was on a win-now team as a rookie. And this is somebody who he has a championship. He's been to the finals. He has that experience already, despite getting the true opportunity to showcase his own abilities. And I think each time that he's tried to show his abilities or gotten a chance, they've been stripped right from him because it's either been in cases where Draymond gets hurt or some one of the other, core players of the Warriors in the past have gotten hurt, and he's just kind of be that, serviceable player you put in there for them, and then he gets those minutes taken right back. And I think this year, he's finally showcasing. He's not the most consistent, but when he is at his best, he is a really good player and showcasing why he was, I think, what was he, fifth pick?
Yeah, he was up there 7, I think. Maybe I don't know.
Maybe 7. Yeah, he was somewhere up there. And I like I said, I think this is somebody on another team will be able to definitely see his true colors. I think it all goes back to what I was saying. I think 2 pods ago that I was on. It's hard for Steve Kerr to manage a team with a lot of younger players because he hasn't had to do it before. And unfortunately, Jonathan Kuminga is on the receiving end of that inexperience of dealing with younger players. So. Shout out Jonathan Kuminga. He's balling in a tough situation because it's not easy to play for guys like Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, and Draymond Green, especially when the media is always watching you and you have to play perfectly pretty much.
Right, and unfortunately for Jonathan Kuminga, it doesn't look like his opportunity is going to widen anytime soon because there's just a report yesterday that said that the Warriors front office will only trade Draymond Green, Klay Thompson, or any of these veterans if Steph Curry says so. So it's going to be a long road for Jonathan Kuminga. Watch out for him this offseason. But then we get over to our dark horse championship team. So me and Bakari, so we said, hey, if the playoffs started today, as of January 30th, if I'm correct, who is the dark horse team? Who's a team that's maybe not a top three team in their conference, or not a betting favorite, but this is a team that can really make some noise in a 7-game series, make a run, maybe to the NBA Finals. You have this can make a lot of the media happy, but I'm gonna let you to dive into Spike Lee's team here.
Yeah, the Knicks are it's weird. When you watch the Knicks play, it's not an enjoyable style of basketball. And watching them play, you're almost like, how do they win? But Jalen Brunson is another player that could have been an all-star starter over Damian Lillard. Just about every other guard in the East could have been an all-star starter over Damian Lillard, but that's another conversation. Jalen Brunson, I think coming into this year, the Knicks knew that Jalen Brunson was the man, and they knew Julius Randle was the number two. And I think going into this season, that has really helped them establish who they want to be as a team. Compared to last year, they kind of had to figure it out after they traded RJ Barrett and Emmanuel Quickly, who a lot of people, thought that was a bad trade. You get OG and an Obi, and he's really bought into the system. He is the type of player that Tom Thibodeau likes, and he is the type of player that belongs in this New York Knicks system. I believe they're like, what, 11-2, 10-2 since they
Yeah,
traded for him, or at least in the
yeah.
month of January or something crazy. This is a legit team, and whether they're able to do it in the playoffs or not, as of right now, if I had to pick a team that I bet on to go all the way that's not considered a favorite, I'd probably pick the New York Knicks because of how scary they can be. They can match up with anybody in the league. They have the defense. They have a few injuries right now. I think Julius Randle is going to be out a few weeks, maybe a few months with that shoulder dislocation,
That's
but
nasty.
yeah, I think still this team still has the makeup and the feed to show they belong. And honestly, the way a certain team played last night, I could have changed it to them too.
Right,
Cleveland
right.
Cavaliers, baby. But
I forgot
that's
to
another
mention. I
conversation.
forgot to mention for rookie of the year, I'm going Craig Porter, Imani Hayes, and
Yeah, for
before I
most
should have went
improved,
Donovan
Sam
Mitchell.
Merrill. Sam Merrill most improved. Isaac Crowell, defensive player of the year.
Yeah, Isaac Okoro. I mean, it was funny last night. For those at home, if you didn't watch the game, the Cavs and the Clippers played at halftime. Of course, the stats came out, and we got an alert that said Isaac Okoro 17, 1-1-1 or whatever. Kawhi Leonard 14, 2-2, whatever. So basically, Isaac Okoro was, you can make the argument was playing better than Kawhi Leonard. I go into the group chat and I'm like, Isaac Okoro, Isaac Okoro is better than Kawhi Leonard, just messing around. And I'm like, the future is now. Let's just say Isaac Okoro ended the game
It
with
was
17, 1,
17,
1, and 1.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, but hey, if you watch the game, he still played really well. JB Bickerstaff. I want everybody to know he is a hater for giving Isaac Crowell like 6 minutes in the second half. But
This
that's
man,
more
this
there.
man JB went to halftime and bet on Kawhi Leonard in the
Yeah,
second half because Kawhi came out and was like, "Yeah, I can't be, outplayed by Isaac Okoro."
yeah. That's
Regardless, we talked about this, Bakari. I'm not even going to spend too much time on this. We know. We know. We know. If you guys have followed this podcast all year, you know who my dark horse championship team is. A team that has two guys that could drop you 30 plus. They just need to be active at the deadline, in my opinion. To grab another 3-and-D guy, to grab another scoring punch off the bench, or just, hey, a legitimate big man. Maybe Clint Capella can find his home here in Dallas, even though he's been mediocre to say the best this year. I just think that you need to find a defensive presence outside of the rookie Derek Lively, who has been solid. He's been good. He could have even had an argument to be in that rookie of the year race. But I think they need a legitimate big man or even just some more pieces around their star players. But I've talked about them every single week. We don't have to keep talking about number 77 and of course 11. But then we talk about our midseason. So if the playoffs start today, of course, who are the two teams in each conference that we think would meet in the finals if the playoffs started today? We have the same answer here. Two teams that are very complete top to bottom. I think one team has a clear head coaching advantage, but one team made a lot of perfect offseason acquisitions, bringing in Drew Holiday, bringing in Kristaps Porzingis, and of course, keeping Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum happy. I'm talking about, of course, the Boston Celtics. But then on the flip side, you have a team that didn't really have things as figured out. They figured out things kind of on the fly this year. And the biggest thing is they've been healthy this year, Bakari, in the Los Angeles Clippers. Can it be their year here? I'll have you dive into these two teams, this matchup, and who would you have winning at this point in the year?
Yeah, like you mentioned, the Celtics made a lot of perfect accusations to their team, or I'm sorry, acquisitions to their team. Kristaps Porzingis alone would have been enough.
Right.
I think Kristaps would have gave them who
Marcus
they were
Smart
looking
too.
for, interior defense. It was what they gained, as well as 3-point shooting. And then you go out and get Drew Holiday, another former champion, another somebody you competed against, somebody who knows the Eastern Conference as well as you do, somebody who's a competitor, somebody who gives you arguably more perimeter defense than what Marcus Smart was probably giving you. Somebody who gives you more offensive versatility than Marcus Smart. To pair with Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum, and Derek White's been playing at a borderline all-star level all year long. This Celtics team, if you went by starting fives, they'd probably be the clear-cut favorites to win the finals. I have concerns about their bench usage and their coaching, head coaching. Obviously, Joe Mazzulla, as Kendrick Perkins said, if you put Joe Mazzulla's brain in a bird and told the bird to fly, it'll start flying backwards. That's an
That was a
all-time
crazy
quote.
quote, man.
Yeah, but I think Joe Mazzulla has some serious things to figure out about himself when it comes to coaching. The Clippers, on the other hand, this is a team that struggled at first after the James Harden trade. And, for me, I couldn't really put my finger why they were struggling so much. It seemed like on paper that this would be willing to work out. And then once they started struggling, I think they lost like 6 or 7 in a row. I was like, oh, maybe this actually won't work. Since then, everybody's bought in. And I think from the jump, everybody was bought in on that Clippers team, and they were willing to sacrifice and do whatever it took to make not only the trade work, but to make it work for the rest of the season. And I think Ty Lue has done a great job, acclimating James Harden into this offense, and they have a serious bench too. Russell Westbrook and Norman Powell off the bench both together is a crazy duo to have coming off of your bench. James Harden is a great playmaker, and not only that, he can score. We know what Paul George and Kawhi Leonard can do. This is a team that is very scary to me, and in my eyes, the way they've been playing recently. And I know, the real title favorites, the Cleveland Cavaliers, just beat them last night without Darius Garland. But to
Isaac
me, the
Okoro,
Clippers
great
are
first half.
probably, if I had to bet yes, my life insurance on a team, it'd be the Clippers.
Yeah. I thought you were going to go with the Celtics. They were my preseason title favorites, just like many others. Of course, that's not too big of a shock. I think the Clippers on paper have everything to not only beat this Clippers team, but just with how much depth they have legitimately 6 to 7 starters on this team. You should be able to just, hey, match up with the Clippers. We have the defenders. We can throw Drew Holiday on Kawhi Leonard. Again, he's going to minimize him. We could throw Jaylen Brown on Paul George. We could throw Derek White on James Harden, or however you want to do it, and then just have Jason Tatum, your best player, arguably a top 5 player in the league. I wouldn't go that far, but top 10 for sure. You can have him just, hey, go win us this series. And we've seen time and time again, he can't show up in the playoffs unless it is the NBA Finals. But I think the NBA is weird, just like sports are weird, where everything should go in the Celtics' favor here. I think just with the head coaching advantage, and we've said it since they were formed, if this team can stay healthy, they can win it all. If you have Paul George and Kawhi Leonard, and not to mention the best coach in the NBA, which me and you have said that for years. I would give the edge also to the Clippers because the NBA is weird, and even though they shouldn't win, they will because of that head coaching advantage. Bakari, there's not many coaches in the league that I would say JB is in conversations of who is better with. I think Joe Mazzulla is one of those coaches where JB could be better than.
It's crazy because, obviously unrelated to the two teams we're talking about. Oh, I mean, I guess related to the Celtics. JB has actually been coaching really well.
He has
This
been.
past probably since December. He's been looking like a top 15 coach in the league. So I will give JB Bickerstaff credit, but I just wanted to add in another reason why I would think that the Clippers have the advantage in a series against the Celtics, obviously, when they probably shouldn't, is that I trust Kawhi and Paul George, especially in tighter circumstances, more than I trust Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum, who are the best 2 players on the Celtics, just like the best 2 players on the Clippers. Obviously, we've seen Jason Tatum have huge playoff performances, but we've also seen him have multiple stinkers in a row. We've seen Jaylen Brown have huge playoff performances,
All
but
I'm saying.
when you need to get it done, like the Warriors, they were a better team versus the Warriors in that finals, and they just weren't able to get it done. Whether Jason Tatum had a broken wrist or not, they weren't able to get that done. And Paul George had some concerns. Once he joined the Clippers, I guess going back to his OKC days in the playoffs, but I think he proved everybody what he can really do. I think a couple of years ago in that playoff run where they went to the conference finals. And I think he would have did the same thing last year if he had played. Kawhi Leonard, obviously, he played one playoff game last year and he was amazing. Kawhi Leonard has been on a mission this year. If you have not watched Kawhi Leonard, he is a different type of player. It almost looks like he has the same drive that he had when he was in Toronto. And
Yes.
when he's that type,
He's out for blood this year.
yeah, when you get him into those playoffs series and situations, he rises up to be a top 3 player in the league, probably top 2 sometimes. So this Clippers team has a lot of drive this year, and I think that's what will give them the edge against the Celtics team.
Yeah. I think it's good to, mention that Kawhi Leonard, like you mentioned there, he's different when it comes to playoff time. This is the guy that took a game off of Kevin Durant and Devin Booker by himself last year.
Hey, don't forget Russell Westbrook.
Well, I was gonna get to that. I was gonna say this is also a good point. Good time for me to mention that Bakari is the biggest Russell Westbrook and Paul George fan on this earth.
Yeah.
So it's coincidental that he picks them to win the NBA Finals. But hey, I mean, hey, if Carmelo Anthony was on the Portland Trailblazers, I would be sitting here making an argument that Scoot is the best rookie in the class, and he turn it around.
Anthony Simon should have been an all-star starter.
Right, Jeremy Grant. Jeremy Grant is Kawhi Leonard. We just don't know it yet.
DeAndre Ayton is Dennis Rodman.
I can't even make an argument for that. But that's gonna do it here for today's show. Of course, episode 135 in the books. Midseason NBA Awards in the books. Coming up this weekend, of course, this Friday, the NBA reserves for the All-Star teams are going to be announced. And if everything goes right, I'm going to grab Bakari and, of course, some other guys, and we're going to come out here and draft the All-Star teams, just like we did last year, just like last year when I decided to put my faith in Larry Marketing, and Bakari ended up just running away with the entire draft. So this year, hopefully it's different, right? This year, we're going to try and draft the teams, whether if it's just the 2 of us or we have 3 or 4 people. It should be tons of fun this weekend. But on Thursday, of course, we have the NFL Pro Bowl special. Amir and I are going to go through some drafts on our own. We're going to be talking about the NFL conference title games from this past weekend. But Bakari, any last thoughts here before we get out of here? Oh, it's always a pleasure.
Yeah, it's always great being on the pod. Obviously last video it did 10K views.
Yes.
First one, channel history.
Yes.
It seems like every day there's a new milestone with this channel, and that's the best part about the growth, about the support we get from all the viewers, everybody who engages with the channel. We couldn't be more more happy with what's going on. We couldn't be more it seems unreal. It seems like a dream. Everything from me coming on the pod the first time I've been on it to all the way till now. I'm not on it as consistently as I was, but seeing Amir on it every Thursday and seeing how much it's growing. It's we have face cams now. We were doing this sitting right next to each other on a kitchen counter when I first started. So
I used to make this man drive out to the house twice a week, and he lived like 30 minutes away. Twice a week, 2 out of 3 days. And every single day you'd have some kind of breakfast. If not, you were ordering from Cracker Barrel after the fact.
The best part.
The best part. But yeah, of course, long journey for this channel, but it's only the beginning. This is literally chapter 1 of the podcast. It's only going to get bigger and better than ever. But Bakari, if that's all, I'll see you soon, maybe this Saturday. If not, we'll see you next time. Get out of here.